Hello there, I'm Tim and he's John, and this is How to Murder Time, a podcast about games and things.
Hello everybody.
Watcher.
We're back.
Back again.
Another week.
I know, like
Summer's
the
over.
relentless turning of a giant millstone, grinding the grain of mild interest into the flower of a runaway metaphor.
Yeah.
Yes. We're back. We've played some games. Shall we start? Or if you want to...
You can start.
I'm going to start with Torment, Tides of Numenera. And I keep getting that wrong. I keep calling it Numenera, Tides of Torment, and it's not. It's the other way
Can
around.
we just call it not Planescape Torment?
Planescape Torment 2, yes. It so desperately wants to be Planescape Torment 2. So this is the spiritual successor, which is a code phrase for we don't have the rights to do an actual sequel.
We don't have the rights, but we've probably got some of the devs.
We're going to do it anyway. Yes, so... This is essentially a point-and-click adventure game of the ye olde Baldur's Gate type style, which is quite popular and fashionable these days. In fact, when you fire it up, it even says, there's a little one of the splash screens says Pillars of Eternity tech or engine or something. So it is essentially based on the Pillars of Eternity
Makes
engine.
sense.
I've not played Pillars of Eternity. I probably should. That's widely highly regarded as well. So
It
Pillars
is
of
certainly a game.
Eternity is to Baldur's Gate what this thing is to Planescape Torment. It's the usual format. You have a little guy on the screen. It's a sort of locked top-down sort of isometric kind of view, and you click around the screen, uncovering areas and looking at things and interacting with other characters and chats and so on. It's sort of pseudo 3D in the way that the old games, Planescape Torment and stuff, weren't. So that was all pre-rendered and it was all sprites.
Yeah.
But they sort of use a 3D engine to replicate that look and feel.
You always
now.
forget how old those games are.
They are really, really old. 20 years plus, at least. Probably the rest as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Baldur's Gate, I don't know off the top of my head. Planescape Torment came out just after Baldur's Gate. So Baldur's Gate was a fine thing in its day. It did its thing. It was a sort of, I don't know, I always found it to be a fantastic implementation of Dungeons and Dragons. And right down to all the stats, all the sort of equipment, the character skills and classes and spells and abilities, all realised in computer game form in a way that didn't leave you having to use your imagination in the way Dungeons and Dragons did. I mean, it was a very frustrating thing, Dungeons and Dragons, for me back in the day, because I never really got the group together back then. We never really got the thing rolling, and you know, for one reason or another, it was always a somewhat unsatisfying experience. So when computer game came along that interpreted it pretty much spot on. Fantastic. So everyone loves Baldur's Gate, or they don't, you know. If they don't, I've probably lost you already at this point. But so Baldur's Gate came along.
Probably a new record for earliest in the episode.
After that came Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment. So Baldur's Gate was Baldur's Gate.
Is Icewind Dale a relation?
Icewind Dale was a sort of... it wasn't really a... I see what you did there. Sorry, a bit slow. Yeah. But Icewind Dale was basically, let's take Baldur's Gate and just really dial down on the plot and puzzles and reading. And it really was a very combat-y, dungeon crawly type of, I don't know, proto-Diablo. Diablo was doing its thing at the time.
If I was going to be slightly harsh, I'd say they Salvatored it.
It's Salvatore. Well, I don't know. It was set in the Forgotten Realms, as was Baldur's Gate. Icewind Dale at the top in the far north, and there was a whole series of R.A. Salvatore books about the series as well. It went down well, but it was essentially not that deep, Icewind Dale. It was deliberately sets out to be. There's no massive epic story to it. There's a very loosely chained together set of reasons why you're attacking this set of dungeons in a row. But so that was sort of, that was popular with the folks who really liked the combat of D&D. But Planescape Torment almost went entirely the different direction with it all, and it became this really weird sort of interactive novel thing disguised as a Baldur's Gate game. Famously, there are only 4 required fights in the entire 40-odd hours of gameplay. The rest of the things you can either avoid or talk your way around, or in a couple of memorable cases, literally discuss out of existence some of the opponents. Planescape was the second edition campaign setting that went with Dungeons and Dragons, and it was a sort of Outer Planes revamp thing. The original planes are Earth, Wind and Fire, and the outer planes of all the different hells and heavens, how to work that into the cosmology of Dungeons and Dragons so that all your gods and devils can function correctly. That was was originally the Manual of Planes by Jeff Grubb in the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and it did its job, but it was a bit of a sterile bolt-on sort of thing, and that was really taken and really ran with the Planescape setting. A lot of people had a lot of fond memories. It was a little bit before my time. My first exposure to it was through Planescape Torment. And it was an absolutely crazy place. It was very philosophical. It was about... Essentially, Planescape sort of sets up this kind of Casablanca kind of place, Sigil, which is the main city in the Planescape setting, which is at the centre of the multiverse. And it acts as a kind of Casablanca sort of place where the opposing agents of this big celestial war in heaven could go to fraternise and sort of do shady dealings and so on, and it became a really sort of fancy adventure town with portals to everywhere. It was an ideal setting for a kind of wacky, out there, sort of philosophical, cosmological kind of Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and it was really well utilised to create the backstory of Planescape Torment. Now, Planescape Torment is a bit of a thing. It has an enormous reputation, and it depends. Your mileage might vary. I always found that reputation to be hugely deserved. It was an immensely cerebral, immensely philosophical, quite intricate, lavishly storied thing that went on multiple levels. Basic story is you are an amnesiac immortal that wakes up in a mortuary trying to find out who killed you and why, and it sort of really just spirals out of control from there. You come across a wacky cast of supporting characters, a big villain, a massive conspiracy going on that sort of runs all through the multiversal reality. You, as yourself, there can be almost any class as you develop through. In terms of game mechanics, you become more and more and more powerful in a way that just totally sort of runs amok with the Baldur's Gate conventions. Your ability scores reach sort of the high 20s eventually towards the end, starting from your original sort of 18, 3 to 18 dice rolls. You become literally a living god as you uncover more and more of who and what you are and why what's going on is happening to you. It was a really sort of satisfying, quite depending how you play it, of course. It really sort of, normally alignment is just this weird idiot score for measuring how your paladin abilities work or don't, but they really
I've never been a fan of alignment.
Well, no, nor the people who wrote Planescape Torment, because they really run off with it, and it really starts to be significantly implemented and have an impact on the world around you, particularly since we're talking about the outer planes, which are the planes of belief. This is where the gods and devils all live, and this is where most people go when they die. This is where all the heavens and hells are. Of course, you can adventure into these places whilst alive still as well, and meet all sorts of crazy things and stuff. But they're places where you believe things. If you believe things strongly enough, they actually happen. And that's a pretty key fundamental concept with the outer planes and Planescape itself.
That's how my head works.
Indeed, yeah. Solipsism ahoy. So you end up with a character that can start to manifest and warp physical reality by the dialogue choices you start to pick, which is fantastically fun and played with in a lot of places. Planescape is quite rife with humour as well. It doesn't take itself that seriously. But then there's a lot of really quite epic stuff going on in this story. So, it famously has, like I say, the most combats up to and including, there are 4 required fights in the entire game of Planescape Torment. One of them is the tutorial combat where you have to kill a zombie that's in the same room as you to get the key to unlock the room to get out of. So basically,
it's just the world's worst run mortuary.
Well, it's the headquarters of a philosophical faction called the Dustmen. It's a complicated thing, but basically, it's famous for having, I think Chris Avalone's the chap who's sort of famous for doing a lot of the key story work and writing on that. And there are, I believe, about 500,000 lines of dialogue, mostly conveyed through that little pop-up thing at the bottom of the screen, the Baldur's Gate style interface where you click on someone and then at the bottom it'll pop up with some actual text. And the bottom section of that screen, you have a load of numbered options you can choose from. That all starts to become sort of much like a choose your own adventure, really, with very little actually going on on the screen while that's happening. You're reading a story, choosing different outcomes and what you'll say back to people. Many of those options were keyed into your ability scores and stats, which was fascinating. So if you have a high enough intelligence score for your character, which can be incremented significantly and often throughout the game by what you do, those you get extra options. It brackets, square brackets, insight, and another option appears which you can choose. And it was always very satisfying to be given those extra options and to feel quite clever for choosing them and stuff. Many of the things you choose in that dialogue would then feed back into the game. It was a really, essentially an interactive novel, I suppose, is perhaps the most accurate way of describing it. I mean, not in perhaps the same way that your walking simulators or your sort of more modern interactive novels, they're a little more visual. This was a kind of, essentially a book that was supported by a kind of Baldur's Gate-y game behind it. I don't know, it was a Marmite thing. A lot of people loved it, and then, quite passionately, and it became quite boring when talking to about it. Hello. And a lot of people just bounced off it. This is a bit dull, and they went off, and for them, there was Diablo, or whatever was coming along and doing its thing at the time.
It's certainly a game which has given me the best ability to tune out people talking.
it is a very specific thing. It was liked by a lot of people, but not everyone, and not by a vast number of people, and become, I suppose, the very definition of a gaming cult classic. So here we are today. They're at the business end of a lengthy Kickstarter. There was all sorts of pledges, donations, and crowdfunding and stuff. And I think this is perhaps one of those examples of Kickstarter that works.
Yes.
In that you're not going to get a large AAA publisher do a Planescape Torment sequel or whatever. Just, apart from the rights, hell, and all the rest of it, who owns the rights to Planescape? Planescape isn't even a thing in modern D&D anymore. I don't think the rights are accessible for like 5th edition reprinting books or anything. I mean, they're redoing Eberron, the campaign setting that's used in DDO. That's coming out for 5th edition D&D now as a big re-release. But I don't think we'll ever see a Planescape thing again. So you probably won't ever see a sequel to Planescape Torment. The problem with Planescape Torment is it was such a unusual and once in a lifetime thing that I think it's very difficult to sit down and write a tick list of what made that work.
Yes.
The secret sauce, the magic formula that made Planescape Torment. It's, presumably, a collection of people, certainly, designers and story writers. Chris Avalone, I think, is involved in this Torment Ties of Numenera, so that's a help. I think he's part of Obsidian, works with them. I think New Vegas, who worked on that. So, yeah, he's a very talented story writer who resonates well with me because he writes the kinds of stories I like to read. So I do. I'm not really into following celebrity devs, the Molyneux and the Robertses and all the rest of it, your Rockstar Romeros and I don't really subscribe to all that. They're people they are artists who produce works, and I like those works, and they are often a guide to further works. But the thing is, a computer game is made by like 200-300 people. You can't just pick one guy and say I love all his work. Like David Bowie or Rembrandt or something like that. It doesn't really work quite that way in game design. I mean, there are people who are in charge who you can generally follow, but it's the implementation, the team they put around them, the publishers they work with. It's a difficult thing. But what they set out to do with this Kickstart thing for Torment Tides of Numenera is all the way through. It's Planescape Torment. Ooh, did you like Planescape Torment? Come and look at this thing. We're going to remake it. We have spiritual success. They actually use that phrase over and over. They name check Planescape Torment constantly throughout the development and the release and the current store pages.
Yeah.
This is something that very, very consciously and very deliberately and perhaps a bit cynically attempts to create a Planescape Torment sequel, even though you're not allowed to call it an actual sequel. So that's quite a bold promise. That's quite a big ask. So they're sort of setting themselves up for failure there a bit, I think. But, so I finally got round to giving it a go. I don't go in for Kickstarters anyway, and then I have the 3-month rule applied to everything all the time anyway. But I've finally gotten round to buying it and giving it a go, fired it up, and it really does deliver. It's astonishing. So if I have any criticism of it at all so far, is that I think it might be trying a bit too hard to be Planescape Torment.
Does it lack its own identity?
A little. So you got this. So Numenera is the angle. So Numenera is a pre-existing thing. So in the tabletop pen and paper rulebook space, there's a similar kind of thing. Planescape was brilliant. We're never going to see its like again. The outer planes were quite downplayed in 3rd edition, 4th, and so on. And people bitch and complain. And I don't make them like they used to. So anyway, there's a chap called Monty Cook who used to work with Wizards of the Coast. Used to work at TSR, who are now Wizards, whatever. He used to work on, I can't remember which editions he was associated with, but he basically went off and left them and went and started his own games company. And he's written basically a rule system and world campaign setting called Numenera, which is the same Numenera of this game. Numenera is a world set 2 billion years into the future of the Earth. It's set in what they call the 9th world, and basically 8 major previous civilizations and probably countless smaller ones have come and gone in that time. And so we're in basically the kind of science fantasy ultra far future where Arthur C. Clarke's tiresome quoted phrase it rules the day. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that's basically the world. The plants, the people, the mountain ranges, even the soil and the dust are the wreckage and remnants of millions and millions of years of defunct nanotechnology. There is nothing natural about the world. And archaeological evidence suggests that at some point during this previous 2 billion years, human beings didn't exist. Oh. So who knows what the people around today are, whether that's time travel or some kind of recreation from genetics, who knows? I mean, the point being is that Numenera provides this fantastically bonkers world where there's a sort of logical underpinning to everything that exists, but it's just so mind-blowingly advanced. It might as well be magic. There are floating obelisks floating through the sky that no one understands, satellites up in orbit that have been put there a million years ago that tick along with sinister purposes of their own. You got something called the Iron Wind, which is this, but for all intents and purposes, essentially chaos. It's a blowing cloud of nanotechnology that just utterly reshapes anything it comes across in quite hideous and ways inimical to life.
I quite like that.
Yeah, it's a world full of astonishing, eye-dropping wonder and bonkers technology and gadgets. The Numenera of the title is the sort of collective name for the artifacts left behind that adventurers go out and scavenge and try and make work for them. And it'll be weird things like a microwave transmitter might be found in wreckage and dug up and used to heat food. You know, I like a jet thruster from some sort of suborbital aircraft might be used as a flamethrower. You know, it's that kind of, it's not quite Mad Max post-apocalyptic sort of junk town sort of thing, but it's that kind of sensibility. You've got these sort of bewildered new people of the ninth world picking through the wreckage. You know, it's entirely possible there are no mineral resources left on this earth that aren't junk piles from past empires and stuff. And it's a really evocative and interesting setting. Coupled with that, you've got a new rule system as well that isn't D&D, which is a much lighter thing, much more narrative. It's more about skill checks rather than complicated, to hit tables and that kind of thing. Usually you'll have a stat, you'll have a bonus, there'll be the difficulty will be a number, you roll some dice, add it all together, hurrah! That skill check based system, which it does underpin a lot of the D20 stuff, a lot of Pathfinder and D&D, but this seems a lot lighter. You've got this concept of effort. You have pools which replenish every day, might, speed and intellect, and every day you get a certain number of points of that, and you can spend points in that to make your skill checks easier or to add on top of your skill checks, which basically takes a little bit of the randomness out of it. If there's a thing you have to absolutely succeed at doing, you can spend some of your depletable resources to make that happen. Apart from that, the rules seem... I got most of the way through... I actually bought the rule book for Numenera, and it was just a passing interest thing anyway. I thought perhaps might like to run some kind of campaign in it, but the rules do seem a lot easier, a lot more accessible, a lot simpler, and it's much more about the exploration, the wonder and the storytelling than the mechanical business of standing in a corridor that's divided into squares fighting a number of goblins that all have these sorts of weapons that do that number of attacks. So yeah, a lighter sort of system, and they've translated that into Numenera Tides of Torment into the game, and it seems to come across fairly well. I mean, I don't know enough about either system really to understand if it's been implemented well or if it works as a computer game, but they have a concept called crises, which is essentially the fights. Yeah. So most of the time you're wandering around town, talking to people, clicking through dialogue, reading a lot of text, which is good, but every so often you'll end up in an actual fight. There's the obligatory early stage tutorial-y fight that they put you through very early on, and the crises essentially, yes, you can use weapons and abilities and skills to cause damage, but also you could try talking to people during the fight to see if you can talk them down, or you can interact with bits and pieces of the stuff around you on devices lying nearby that you could try and turn on and see if they affect the what might be a battle but not quite a battle. Yes, obviously attacking them all with stuff and killing them will do the job, but it looks like they've tried to take this concept from Planescape Torment of talking your opponent down or talking them to death without actually coming to blows. Try to take that into the fight mechanics as well. So the fights are fights, but within the fights, there's high charisma option, that kind of thing, or using your intellect to work weird gadgetry to suddenly flood the battlefield in goop or whatever, that sort of thing. It's like they're almost afraid of, because I think one of the defining characteristics of Planescape Torment was how unfighty it is. Yes, you could. The nameless one of Planescape Torment, you could develop him up as a mighty fighter and just go through butchering everyone if you wanted to. But you really get the impression playing through that the game thinks you're doing it wrong. Yeah, it really wants to go off on its lavish. And I'm going to use the word pretentious because Planescape Torment was very pretentious. That's something I loved and enjoyed personally. I was very impressed with. But I mean, that sensibility runs through into Numenera as well. So the story Numenera, you awake. You awake as falling from the sky in a weird cocoon. You are the last cast-off, instead of the nameless one from the first day. The last cast-off of the Changing God, who is a kind of post-mortal wizard type who's millennia ago managed to work out the secret of transferring his consciousness into new bodies as and when required. Okay. And he does this once a decade on average. And it's pursuing inscrutable higher purposes of his own. And you are the most recent cast-off. He's left your shell. And one of the side effects of this is that when he leaves the shell spontaneously generates its own new independent consciousness, which is you, in this case. So you find yourself falling from the sky, and there's a whole load of narrative stuff goes on before you even get to. It's just a black screen with some whooshing air lines running through it, and a whole load of reading text stuff. It really sort of preps you for
this is large and round. And
I wonder if it will be friends with me. I know I was expecting that line to come up, but it is that kind of thing. Anyway, so obviously you don't die. Some strangers. You'd fall towards some wreckage and ruins, and some strangers in the ruins use a cipher, which essentially is a kind of magical one-off device type thing to slow your descent. You land with a hell of a bang anyway, but somehow manage to suddenly regenerate. And while that regeneration's going on, you suddenly find yourself awakened in your mind space. And this is a big thing they do throughout the fathoms, they call them. You're basically building, as a part of the narrative, you're building inside your head a series of mental spaces in which you can talk to echoes of people you've met or people from the future and whatever.
Sounds a bit Sherlock Holmes.
It's a mind palace, and bits of this get added to as you encounter new people and talk to memories, and memories appear in the world. And very much like in Planescape Torment, in Planescape Torment, you're an amnesiac immortal, and you're trying to work out what happened in your previous lives. You wake up with no knowledge of any of it, and as you play through, different stimulus in the real world trigger memories of your own, and you start to reclaim them back. And that's one of the ways you gain lots of XP and level up, is by sort of slowly uncovering and rediscovering more and more of who and what you were. You get some of that with this as well. You're not actually the changing god yourself, but you're obviously being a physical, the previous brain that it was inhabiting. You can access those memories more and more as you go through. So you begin the quest of trying to. You want a fragment of your mind tells you that to stabilize yourself and stop things going really bad, you need to find this device and use it quite quickly. But of course, you landed on that device, smashing it up as you came in. So your initial quest is to try and get someone to help you fix this device so that you can use it and stabilize what you are and who you're becoming and things like that. And it's very metaphysical all the way through. And you get to meet some interesting companions. One of them's Callisteges, is a woman who has somehow managed to superimpose every alternate reality version of herself onto her actual self. So she's in fact a kind of Legion character. Okay. And the actual physical character in game has these ghostly images of herself flickering around her all the time. So she can basically access and talk to the other versions of herself throughout every possible reality. And that's the kind of people you're meeting already. Then there's the other chap you meet is an embittered ex-Aeon priest, who are an organisation who attempts to understand the ancient technologies and harness them and use them to bring a kind of civilization to this current world. And he's covered in living tattoos that he can pull off and throw around in combat. These are just the first two two companions you meet, and they are so templated on the companions you get in Planescape Torment as well. They're very similar kinds of creature with weird metaphysical problems and personal foibles and agendas of their own, and they bicker and they chat to you, and you can ask them for insight. And you learn more about them as you go, as a kind of B story for each of them. You meet others around the town. The initial town, Sagus Bluffs, is this sort of coastal city built on the ruins of a whole load of ancient fallen war machines and things. Very similar to Sigil in Planescape Torment, which is the city you start in there. I mean, all throughout. I mean, I've only been playing about 10 hours in, and I've got about sort of 5 or 6 locations in. There's that much reading to do. But all the way through, you're spotting similarities, like Fell's tattoo shop from Planescape Torment. He's like a sort of a goat-like, sort of half demon, half angel type creature who's mute and specialises in tattoos. And the tattoos in Planescape Torment are the way your equipment. You don't get magic artifact and items. You're just mostly running around in your loincloth and your weird tattooed scarred skin. But you gain tattoos. You can buy tattoos from a shop which affect your stats. And also that set of tattoos expands the more experiences you have in game. You can tell the tattooist about them, and he'll engrave them on your skin, and that will open up even more stat boosts and abilities and things. Anyway, so that's Planescape Torment. In Numenera, in the Numenera game, you've got a bioaugmentation clinic, which seems to offer a similar list of options. It's like all the way through you're thinking, oh, that's thingy from there. And in one case, I have actually gone into a bar and literally met an NPC from Planescape Torment that I remember quite well. They're just written straight into this game verbatim. And he is the same. It's the same guy, performs broadly the same kind of abilities and functions on you when you talk to him. It is a game, I suppose it sets out to try and be Planescape Torment so hard, and it's so desperately wants to be. It's almost like it's afraid to branch off and start doing its own thing. You can almost map one-to-one the kinds of things that are going on in there. the early stage where you're running around Sigil stroke Sage's Bluffs, learning, the clueless idiot not knowing who we are and trying to pick up. And then you start off in helping people with their own problems. And one of the things with Planescape Torment I really enjoyed that they've also copied quite convincingly in here is all the little passers-by you talk to have their own bonkers, weird, magical realism, science fantasy backstory going on. Just talking to them, often many of them are doing nothing to propel your own plot. They don't even have the quests of their own to give you, but they're just fascinating reading the textures of the kinds of stories that are behind each of them. It's like a lot of work has gone into fleshing out this world. I wonder if it like Planescape Torment is going to suffer a bit from a rushed third act.
Possibly.
Because Planescape Torment's a fantastic thing to lose yourself in and immerse yourself in until you start to leave Sigil and you end up in the Gate Town and out in Bator and so on, and Carcerai, and it starts to get really rushed at that point. It's like they've run out of time and money and just need to write, all right, get the character there, get the main story told, and the sort of the lavish sort of surroundings start to peter away a bit. And that might, I don't know if that's the case with the late stages of this game, but if it did that, then it would be true to the original as well, I suppose. It's and all of this sounds like a criticism. Oh, it's too much like Planescape Torment, and I don't think that's a criticism at all. It really does set out to do what it does, which is basically create a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. And yeah, if any criticism it has, I think, is that it's a bit afraid to establish its own identity. Yeah. It's a bit afraid to try its own things for fear of breaking that magical formula that we don't quite understand. We don't quite know what makes Planescape Torment. It's a number of things brought together in a particular way that I thought we'd only see once in our lifetime. But I think they've managed to do it very convincingly. It is quite slow paced. I mean, I find myself just playing a few hours here and there and really sort of absorbing it in and not wanting to rush it and not wanting to crash through each plot. I'm probably going to talk to every NPC I see, try and tick off every quest. I mean, completion wise, that's what I do anyway a lot of the time. But
you are weird like that.
It does seem to really pay off in this game because there's just so much nuanced little detail in the tiny little corners and the unexpected places, as well as the quite an intriguing main plot. And the main plot, I assume, is going to have me confronting the changing god at the end of it all, and either, I don't know, trying to assume his identity or trying to stop him doing what he's doing or whatever. I don't know. That's one of the joys of it. Of course, early on in your mind space, when you're introduced to the concept, you get attacked by a thing called the Sorrow, which is this black darkness of tentacles that fires off shadows, and that's very Planescape Torment as well. The early stage of Planescape Torment has you being pursued and hunted by these shadow creatures that you don't understand, and you're trying to work out who's sending them and why, and that seems to have been translated again, the very same. It's not so much the main story is the thing with these two games, it's the surroundings, it's the intricate, well-realised bonkers out there magic world that is a million miles away from the Forgotten Realms and Galarian and whatever, your generic D&D style backstory world that's slightly pseudo medieval with a bit of King Arthur and Merlin all in it. This is a million miles away from that, and Numenera particularly, and Planescape Torment as well. They sort of defy any other kind of categorization as well. They're not really space western, they're not really steampunk, they're not really this, that or the other. They are their own things, and using these two games as a lens with which to explore those two fascinating backstory worlds is great in itself. Is an amazing thing. It is a very narrative experience. It's not very flashy, even within modern what I assume to be the Pillars of Eternity engine at work. You are still essentially looking at small people that might as well be sprites. And these are actually 3D people. They've actually 3D modelled the people and the landscapes they're in. But since you're in a locked camera view anyway, I mean, the advance on Planescape Torment is you can mouse wheel to zoom in and out on the thing. And they are quite detailed at close range, which you wouldn't have got in the original game. That was just a very fixed perspective because it was all just sprites. But and I find myself not even wanting to get into situations where combat might happen because I know combat's not going to be great. The example they gave was just, essentially it seemed to be Numenera rules, which essentially give you a move and an action. So you can move to a place and do a thing, and the thing might be hit someone with a thing, or it might be use a device or whatever. And then everyone takes their turns. It's a very sort of Fallout-y style action point spend type thing, but not even with action points. You literally have a movement and an action. Yeah. And it's not even points, like some weapons take more points to do than others, or if you move a short distance you could do more. It does seem to be a very, very simplistic combat system, which, to be honest, I don't think anyone's coming to this game to enjoy. That's not the reason you're playing it. So I'm playing through that, and it's going to take me a very long time because I'm just rationing it out. I'm finding that I was a bit sceptical to begin with. I thought, Planescape Torment, we'll see. But no, they really have. I mean, I imagine partly because they've got quite a few people who were involved in Planescape Torment working on this thing anyway. In Exile Studio videos. I don't know who they are or what provenance or where they came from or whatever else they've done, but it's a Kickstart thing, which means it suggests that the whole concept wasn't particularly popular in the first place. Otherwise, it would be just a big AAA EA project or whatever. But Kickstarter can work for providing niche things that people specifically want, I suppose. And if they want that thing enough and they are prepared to pay more than you would just pay for a computer game normally to do so, then it can happen. And this is an example of that. Like I say, if you love Planescape Torment, I think this is definitely worthy of attention, worth a look. You'll find many similarities, and I think in a good way. And we'll see as we go through. I fully intend to try and play my way through to the end of it all, and we'll see what it's like, whether it's worth it in the end, but it will take a while to do. So good. Yeah. So you go like, look.
I'm just wondering.
Hello.
I'm just wondering if you're going to push it out to the full half hour. You're a couple of seconds.
I probably ought to let you talk. No,
couple of seconds shy on a full half hour.
I think an occasion such as Planescape Torment and its spiritual successor are worthy of a detailed examination. But I probably ought to stop talking for a bit.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Kill Team.
Go on then. My turn to glaze over.
No, you played as well.
I was playing, yes.
No,
we
played several games of Kill Team, which is the Games Workshop tabletop game for teams of 3 to... Oh, books on the table, isn't it?
There we go.
3 to 20 people.
Quite a weighty tome.
It's all army lists.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Basically, easy to get into, relatively cheap to start compared to other games.
See, I had this down as a kind of entry gateway junior 40k type thing. But it does seem to be its own kind of thing.
Well, no, it's a gateway junior 40k thing in the way of it gets you buying their models, and they know full well that once you get the bug for painting, after you finish painting those 6 minis or 20
enjoying
minis,
these game then. Maybe you'd like to try this. Boom, 40k.
Then you go into the shop and there's the starter box for your force, which is 50 quid and it has a
still quite pricey, isn't it?
Yeah, but
for what's supposed to be a skirmish entry level game. What I like about Kill Team personally is that once you've got your 6 or 7 miniatures, you are done.
Noob.
Yeah, well, that's how I like to believe anyway. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work like that. Yeah. So basically...
But with 40k, if you wanted to play a proper game of that, you're on the hook for at least 300 or 400 quid's worth of stuff, plus paints, plus scenery, Yeah.
But in this case, it's a limited number of stuff. I've almost finished painting my Kill Team.
Yeah, I can see them there. They're looking quite good.
Yeah, a bunch of Dark Angels. My first Kill Team.
So there's your Space Marines with the dark green scheme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and definitely loyal. Definitely loyal.
Are they broody emo with possibly loyal, possibly traitors types?
Well, they're broody...
good solid Ultramarines. You know where you are with them.
They're broody emo monks who may have a secret that half their chapter fell to the bad guys, and they don't like people knowing. So they spend a lot of time making sure people don't know. And if they do know, they no longer know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I put one of those together. We've played several games now. We played...
You caught me in a moment of vulnerable weakness, and I went and bought myself some Harlequins as well. So I've got a Kill Team too. Yeah. Which are your sort of space elf, murder clown, acrobat types. Which I quite like as a painting project.
So we played a couple of games on the starter sets, board and scenery, but with our own Kill Teams. The starter set comes with a bunch of buildings, some really nice buildings actually, and it also comes with Genestealer cults and Admech armies, but we're not using those at the moment. So what we played 3 games in the end, was it?
Yeah, we had I think 2 with our own teams, and then we swapped teams to try the other way around.
What were your thoughts about it? Because it's designed to be a shorter, easier to play in a convenient amount of time.
I was expecting it to be quicker, to be honest. It still did take about 2 hours. An hour for one game. And
about an hour for one game.
Yeah.
I reckon they'll get quicker because we were learning the rules at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I keep forgetting the rules and the look-up tables, and it's still a whole bunch of cross-referencing charts and stuff.
Yeah, but I've solved that. But I've printed out page 208 from the manual and laminated it.
Yes, the reference chart there. I liked it. I think it's short, sharp, and to the point and precise. I mean, it didn't sort of ramble on. There's a lot of rules in there that seem to bulk individual troops up. The whole flesh wound concept essentially is a 50-50 you might stay alive. Essentially, it gives each model a bunch of lives in addition to their
3 lives, but for each life
points.
They get slightly less good.
Yeah.
What I like about it is the battle zones. The starter comes with a card base, which is the size of the battle thing, and the buildings. But you can also buy other ones, like you can buy
high quality
loading
card
docks.
stock,
Yeah, very high quality card stock. You buy a loading zone or industrial equipment or a forest.
Gives you a whole variety of different planets to be fighting on.
So it's basically a scenery in a box for just one area, for one thing. I like, the problem with 40k is you run out.
Yeah.
You buy your army, and you lovely put your army together. Then you realise you've got no scenery, and you end up playing on a big 6 foot by 4 foot table, which is just no scenery, and no line of sight blocking scenery, and so it just.
Then you're having to make like pressure gas tanks out of Coke cans and things like that.
And so you then have to make enough scenery to make it interesting, because you need to break up the battlefield. So people with long range guns don't have a massive advantage over the people who want to get in your face and stab you.
Well, that's the big problem I think inherent in the basic game, is that your troops divide into two types. There's the shooty people and the people who can stab stuff well.
Yeah.
And the people who stab stuff well have to run very fast at the shooty people and then stab them. And if they die while they're running in and being shot at, then the shooty people win. And if the shooty people can't shoot them before they get close enough to stab them, the stabby people generally win. And that sort of seems to be the breakdown of every 40k and even this Kill Team game that I've ever played. So perhaps we ought to try like 2 sets of Marines and see how that works.
Yeah.
2 sets of stabby people.
My Marines were doing quite well as being stabby. I thought they were holding on their own against.
I think
the
that's
Harlequins.
the key. I think the mistake to make playing this is to assume it's a whole squad of the same trooper.
Yeah, it's not.
Like in
Everyone's
40k. In 40k, you'll get like 20 models and they'll all be identical. They'll all have the same abilities and they all just move, and they do their thing. With the Kill Team thing, they're all supposed to have their own individual names and backstories.
I've done
rather
names
like Dawn of War 2, when you've got a squad of Marines that you're looking after and it's just that squad for the entire campaign, as opposed to Dawn of War 1, which was just dumping hundreds of troops down and charging.
Disposable.
Yeah. The idea that they're elite hero types with their own individual names and backstories and experience bars, do they level up and things?
Yes,
they do,
they
don't
level
they?
up.
So that's a bit of a conceptual shift, I suppose, from the traditional 40k stuff. And I think that's where it all comes into its own. That's where you'll start to tweak and refine and hone these people, because you're supposed to care about the individuals.
You're supposed to care about them enough to lavish attention on each individual model, customize them, and make them your own. Basically.
So I like it so far.
Yeah.
I like it more than 40k, to be honest. I just the spectacle of a game of 40k in progress is fantastic. Just stuff everywhere going on. But the business of rolling 60 dice to attack someone and then moving everything individually two
we need to
inches
play
at a time.
I tell you what, we'll play Custodes against Knights, and then you'll see how only having 6 models on the table makes 40k play.
Fair enough. It's like you're playing with elite. They're all elite units, and it gets much more tighter and much more focused. And it's not about just the vast cascade of dice and playing the overall probability curves.
I do worry that close combat's too powerful.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we have to make sure we're using the rules right as well.
Well, I'm getting there. And so,
but then I think just the nature of the medium means they're not all going to be balanced. There's going to be stronger and weaker stuff, and presumably there'll be a whole bunch of errata or rules tweaks and stuff going around. They all cycle.
There isn't yet, but I'm saying that I bet there's one between now and one I release in a couple of days. You went for Harlequins, which are meant to be one of the most powerful armies, actually.
They seem to be very
They're very resilient.
Well, they've got hollow field emitter things, which basically mean that anything incoming is a miss if they roll a 4 or more. 50-50 chance, basically, of anything actually hitting them, because they're like shimmery performers that aren't really there half the time. They're very good at close combat as well. Stabby.
I've examined a lot of talk online, and the general consensus appears to be that their ability to ignore terrain means they can walk through walls.
They've got thing called flip belts, which is basically like personal jump devices, anti-gravity generators. Basically, they can ignore walls and scenery and terrain.
They can just walk through walls.
Through walls, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, we weren't playing like that, but that makes them very powerful.
Yeah, and also they have a thing which makes them charge further than everyone else as well. They roll 3 dice instead of 2 dice to run, which is important because they're a stabby army, and they're going to get cut to pieces if they have to slowly walk towards them.
When your long-range gun was 6 inches.
Well, that's the other thing, is that a lot of the very long-range tactics from 40k are useless on this thing, because the whole battlefield is 24 inches across.
I think it's 20.
The diagonal is two boards.
37 by 27.
Yeah, 36 inches is going to take you off the map in any direction.
That's the other important thing, is you can play it on your coffee table if you want. You don't need a massive room to play in.
The obligatory 8 foot by 6 foot chipboard in the garage or whatever. So yeah, it's more portable, it's more accessible, it's cheaper to get started into, and ultimately, obviously, if you want to collect loads and loads of different kill teams, then it gets expensive. But if you just want one team and that's your basic minimum ticket to play, it's very
it's definitely
easy
a
to get
game
into.
which is really good if you want to play a bit of games but do a lot of painting, because then you can start putting together lots of kill teams, different things, and you're not stuck having to paint 500-600 orcs.
Yes.
You could just paint 20 orcs
because you're lavishing your attention on six models that have hero characteristics and a name and everything. You can spend a similar amount of devotion on them with the painting.
I think it's also very good.
Make those 6 models look really good.
It's a very good way to learn to paint better as well.
I think so,
because you're just painting more and more models. And one at a time, and not rushing them.
The whole batch.
When you're batch painting models, I don't
the roller out.
You don't really learn as much, I don't think, as when you're doing originally. So after we played our physical game, or actually before we played our physical game, but
I even lost track of who won and who lost. To be honest, I think I lost one.
You won.
I won one. You won 2. Did you?
No, I think you won 2. And
I won 2, and you won 1. Okay, fair enough.
But
it was quite close, though.
Yeah, but
it seemed relatively balanced.
If we ignore reality and the order of events, after we played that, we then played using Tabletop Simulator with a bunch of the guys online.
So doing this online, So this is something I've always thought, ever since we played a lot of Tabletop Simulator in the past. It is a fantastic thing in and of its own right. It's almost no use whatsoever as a solo computer game. It's utterly multiplayer dependent. But what it is a virtual space, and it does support VR goggles as well, in which you can have a board and some pieces and some dice and some cards, and that's it. You can script it up to do scorekeeping and rules enforcement, but that's really not what it's for. It is literally just a place in which you can play board games online with people who are hundreds of miles away or in different time zones or whatever, and that to me was a magnificent thing. I highly recommend it to everyone watching. You get your little gang of online mates together, your guild or your gaming squad or whatever. Get this thing. It's for PCs on Steam. Steam Workshop then has hundreds and hundreds of board games of dubious legality,
and also some which are paid DLC, so they are legal.
Exactly. You can actually buy virtual versions of board games from some games manufacturers who make them available through this thing. But a lot of hobby games on there as well of amateur provenance. And one of the things I saw on there was a whole 40k armies, which I was surprised hadn't been taken down, given how litigious the old Games Workshop certainly were. Perhaps they still are, but I don't know.
I don't think at the moment it really threatens their business.
Quite. It is no substitute for having the miniatures and painting and doing it in real space, but it does make a kind of substitute that lets you try out a few things without going out and buying hundreds of pounds worth of miniatures, which is nice. A sort of try before you buy system. But it also works online with our online gaming gang, and we got a couple of people in there. Unfortunately, the one game we played ran on for quite a long time.
Well, it was the first game we'd ever played, and
but you basically went out and found a battlefield.
I found a battlefield and all of the cards and a bunch of the.
There's a lot more cards to this than 40k.
Yeah,
they're quite important.
But it's not deck building; it's just cards with abilities on.
Yeah,
basically you have command points you can spend to do tactics,
and you get 2 fresh ones of those every turn, and you can spend some of those points to flip a card and do the thing on the card. And there are things like have another go or re-roll a dice, or
charge
move a bit further. And one thing I've noticed throughout the online and the real game of this is I'm really underestimating how pivotal and important using those cards is. You've got to learn what those cards are. There's a whole set of generic cards that are available to every army, and then there are additional cards specific to the Harlequins or the Space Marines.
Yeah, there's 6 for everyone, I think.
Yeah. And they are so important. You've really good because they can really turn the whole thing around.
And then where it gets a bit dodgy is there's another 6 or so in each individual starter set for each army. So you would have to buy them even if you don't want to, just for 6 cards. And that's a little bit dodgy. Yeah.
So so then once you've got your battlefield, you then go off and down. I think the way we found out to do it was to go to one of these armies that someone's put together as 3D models for Tabletop Simulator. Download that and run that as a single player game, and it's just the models on a table. Then you can right click and save each of those locally to your own sort of collection of pieces. Then when you go and join the board that you'd set up and were hosting, if you grant the right kind of permissions, I can then add my own pieces from my own library onto that battlefield, which essentially is me just dropping 6 Harlequin models on there, and then away we go.
And the way I see it, before long, we're just all going to save out everyone's armies and be able to make whatever army we want.
Yeah. Anytime you see another player playing the Harlequins, you can just right-click and save those to your own lot. Yeah, exactly. And since the army consists of like 6 to 10 models, you don't really need to do loads of that.
And I found some interesting Marines, the ones which are made from photos.
Well, this is all down to the individual skill of the mod.
It's called, which is the ability to take a bunch of images of a 3D model, of a physical thing and make a 3D model from it. And so it looks just like a painted 3D model.
Look pretty good.
Not quite perfect, because it never will be, but yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, but that's down to the individual modelling skill of whoever's created that Steam Workshop plugin.
I spent a while actually looking at some of the 3D models that are available, trying to reskin them, and I reckon there's an awful lot that can be done there to make stuff better. And
I don't know what
re-adding
format
to the
I don't know what format those are in. You can probably open them up in some 3D modelling package if you find the files on your disk.
It's object files mainly, or some of it is...
Tweak them, retexture them. Say if you had a set of Ultramarines that are blue and you wanted to turn them into Blood Angels with red detail
funny enough,
instead.
I'm turning people from blue to green.
Yeah, exactly. That would be. But I found models for pretty much every 40k army out there that would do as sub. They wouldn't necessarily be holding exactly the same things your characters say they do on their little stat sheets, but you'd know who is what.
And the advantage that this has over the tabletop one is you can actually name the model. Yes. So when you mouse over it, you can see what the model's name is, so you know which one it is.
You give it tooltips. Yeah. So and I presume we can track health points in a more elegant way than trying to keep counters next to them. But yeah, it was a little bit cumbersome because I think that's just basic limitations of Tabletop Simulator. It is ultimately a system for manipulating 3D space with a mouse and a screen. You know? So there is going to be a certain learning to work with Tabletop Simulator that isn't really Kill Team's fault necessarily, and that can be a little bit cumbersome.
I don't
Comes
know.
with practice though.
There are things that could be added which would make it nicer, like the movement could be a bit nicer.
But then essentially at this point we're criticising the module that someone put together for the map. The
module somebody put together and put out for free, which is a little bit mean.
I know. Tabletop Simulator is Tabletop Simulator. I mean, it works just as well for like Carcassonne or Lords of Waterdeep or chess.
If I was Games Workshop, I would be suggesting that people were to make a real game of this, using proper models and proper buildings and proper things and sell it.
Keep it outside of Steam and do it themselves.
Put it on Steam.
Well, have their own engine.
They should have a third party make this game as a
good idea,
tabletop game.
I expect the license for Kill Team will be on its way out to some game studio at some point. Yeah.
That's the problem. It'll take 2 years for it to come out. So who knows when.
But until then, this is an admirable substitute.
Yeah. So it worked quite well, I thought. It took us ages to play, and we were still learning the rules. I think
we're going to elaborate on the format. Maybe have people playing multiple games rather than everyone just sat there watching me and him lumbering at each other. But,
I think this week when we play,
but then there's a certain spectator value to it as well. I mean, you don't necessarily need to be. Well, if you just want to play, then we can you can hive off other games and do those elsewhere.
This week when we play, I want other people to play, not us.
Yeah.
Will probably just be the one game, I suspect. But I'm going to put together a bunch of example armies that people can get.
You'll be on hand to arbitrate rules and look up stats
with
and things.
The copies of the rules and and now I've got my reference sheet all printed out. That's a lot easier.
Yeah, I think we're talking about organising all that in the Slack channel, which you can find using your own deductive powers. And people do. It's
we're playing on Thursday nights UK time. If you want to come on and play, there'll be plenty of room
and a variety of willing opponents.
In a couple of weeks, hopefully, everyone's up to speed and playing, so there'll be lots of pickup games as well. And then I want to have a campaign run. Yeah,
that'd be interesting. Put together a little bit of narrative, bit of story as to what's going on.
I put together a little website to track the results.
Yes. See, that's sort of the wider meta game of Kill Team, is that you string it together into a story with multiple small fights. Because they are little single squad incursions, you're coming up with reasons why they're there, what's at stake. And we were just playing games where you just had to kill each other.
We haven't even gone on to the objectives yet, which will dramatically change the game.
Yes, because
when it's just two bunch of people running together and meeting in the middle and exploding, that's very simple. But if somebody's having to run over there, grab that, it adds tactics.
Suddenly
and
it's different.
Complexities.
Because otherwise it's work out if you're a stabby army or a shooty army, and then either stand still and wait for them to come to you or go to them, and whoever manages to do that best wins. But objectives should spice things up considerably, I think.
So and of course, if your guy dies in the game, there's a chance that he's actually dead. You roll a dice afterwards and see if he's actually dead.
Okay, so there's all sorts of rules for long-term campaign improvements and
people get better, people will die. Occasionally die, not as often.
Change their gear, that sort of thing. But the idea of caring about an individual space marine is quite novel. Frankly. He's my favourite space marine.
I like the idea of I'm really upset that my heavy bolter guy's got killed because he's done so well in all these games and he's leveled up. Or
it's almost like a Blood Bowl team in a way.
Isn't it? And I also quite like the idea of I'm really glad that his leader Harlequin's died because he is such a pain.
Seeing individual enemy models coming and go, that one, right? I need it. I want him.
He's always a problem.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised how well the Tabletop Simulator worked pretty much straight out of the bat. We had no idea if it would work. It was quite experimental, and it seems to do pretty much everything we need.
Yeah, a decent enough map.
And,
I'm going to...
It seems like the models for everything you could possibly need are out there on Steam Workshop somewhere.
It sometimes takes a little while to find them, but once you do, and once you've got a community finding them and getting them all together, then it just sort of shares like a virus.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting and it's great, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think it's
we like the real Kill Team as well. I normally don't bother buying in any of this Games Workshop nonsense, but I thought, all right, 6 models, I can go with that, and so it ended up 10 models actually.
Well, that matches a pile of buildings on the floor behind us.
I don't mind small, limited scale teams. It's like that Man of War thing in the Uncharted Seas. Things where you've only got like a small handful of models and you're done. Yeah. Not oh god, I've still got to find the money for like another 2,000 models of orcs. I have willpower. I do. I'm done for now anyway. Yeah. Although I do want a solitaire. I need one of those. Okay. Yep.
Can't use it in Kill Team.
Well, yeah, that was disappointing. It turns out half the specialist Harlequins I went out and got don't even exist in Kill Team.
Yeah, but you're going to enjoy playing.
Well, they're just models that are different to the other Harlequins. So that means I can designate that's my heavy weapons specialist guy, or that's my zealot specialist guy. They're not actually what they apparently say they are, but they're nice models as well.
It's not as if we're at a Games Workshop sanctioned event where everything has to be 100%. As long as everyone's happy, everyone's happy.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah. That's
cool.
that.
I'm going to talk a bit briefly. Anno 2070 I picked up and I'm playing again. I love it. Fantastic game. I mean, you play a side.
I can't remember why I stopped
I'm
playing.
not going to do the you play rant. So I stopped playing because I got really far into the campaign and I just started to really overbalance my economy. It was getting to the point where I was constantly dipping in. I was about minus sort of 4,000 on the incremental money side, and I was just about running low on money, and I was offsetting that by trading, so loading loads of surplus materials in docks and going off to the NPC arcs and just selling them there, and that was propping back up my massive income deficit, and I was just about keeping a balance, but it was starting to overbalance, and it was the big campaign thing where the big AI from the science people had gone rogue, and you were trying to basically out economic it and try and bring it down by building all sorts of technologies and going after it, and so I'd sort of my economy was overbalancing, and it was getting really stressful. I thought, gosh, put it down for a bit and go away and play something else. And I never really came back.
5 years later.
Yeah, a couple of years later I came back to it and I thought, that. And so I picked it up, but it was one of those things where I was psyching myself up to really have a go, and then like half an hour later, we're done. I was half an hour from the end of the campaign. So I managed to, and it turned out that during the campaign, because I think the normal rules for Anno 2070 is if you get to minus 10,000 credits, global trust people come in and seize your assets, game over. But I think for the campaign, or certainly for this particular mission, it wasn't doing that, and so it was just quite happy with me being like minus 30,000 in debt, as long as I was pursuing the objectives, and I managed to bring it around and restabilise my economy, and then built the various technologies I needed. Hooray! I was like, okay, I was enjoying that. But it turns out there's loads of single-player single missions as well, and also quite a lot of online stuff, quite a lot of competitive stuff. And then they do these fairly regular events as well, which is sort of comes off the central server that, this week we need to do this kind of objective, and, there's a whole load of maps to do that as well. So there's a lot more mileage in it. And so I'm now playing on some of the single objective ones. There's all achievements that go with it as well.
Of course.
But I just love the look and feel of Anno 2070 specifically. I suppose the other Anno games are of a similar kind of thing.
Different times though.
Yeah, different time periods. I think it's Anno 14 whatever was the first.
That's less
the first one was like a sort of Columbus era merchant trading thing, but very similar. You had docks, you build plantations, and work various different economic tech trees and supply chains of particular materials into secondary and tertiary processing. But with 2070, it's set in this sort of near future where the global warming's been and gone, and it's all islands now, and we're sort of the various large organisations working to rebuild the world and put things back in order after this huge ecological collapse. And it's a kind of optimistic hopefulness to it. The music's fantastic. It's a yappy dog.
There's a yappy
dog. The music and the look and the feel and the art style is amazing. Really good, sort of intricate, detailed mouse wheel zoom in, and you've got these lush islands and all these science fiction style, near futuristic looking buildings, and just a whole load of people who you get to make happy by making useful economic decisions about where to put factories. It's it's just a really nice thing to be, really pleasant game to be playing through, And yeah, the sort of intricacies of putting the supply chains together are nice and fun. I mean, there's a certain degree of combat to it, but it really is placeholder combat. It's every so often a red unit will come in and shoot at your thing a bit, and you shoot it back, and then it goes away. I mean, certainly during the campaign, it was sending one unit at me every sort of 10 minutes or so, just to remind me that there was a war going on. But usually it gives you plenty of breathing space in which to work the economic stuff and the town planning of it all. It's sort of halfway between SimCity and an actual RTS, and it's mostly about the sort of economic supply chain and building enough plantations to feed this particular factory, which makes those things, and eventually you'll make enough people happy, they pay more tax, the whole system balances out. It is a game without ratios, but a really fantastic sort of look and feel to it. A very pleasant kind of game to be whiling away an hour in, that just one more turn feel. So I'm just still enjoying that quite a lot at the moment. Over to you. Anything?
I'm going to briefly talk about Graveyard Keeper.
Graveyard Keeper, okay. Yes.
You're a bloke who dies, wakes up.
Oh yeah, as you do.
Wakes up, and apparently he now has to run a graveyard.
Okay.
It's very much like Stardew Valley.
Okay, I also haven't played.
It looks like that. It's the pixel art 2D jobby. Yeah. So you basically have to do the same sort of thing. You have to run your graveyard, which involves
planting things and harvesting things.
Well, this donkey brings you bodies.
Right.
Which need to be buried.
Okay.
And so you take them down to the morgue, you prepare the body, you put them in the grave, you put a gravestone down and grave aging and everything, and great.
Like farming, but not.
But what happens is you need to make your graveyard as beautiful as possible, and the quality of the corpse matters.
Okay.
So you might want to do things...
What physical quality or moral quality? Or
physical quality.
Okay.
So you might want to, say, take out all the fat, and then you get a better looking corpse.
Okay.
And so...
extensive mortuarial stuff.
And so your graveyard gets a score based on how good stuff you do. To start with, it might be -3, but you'll put a gravestone on and a nice surrounds, and it goes up to plus something, and your score goes up. And this is great, and so you do that for a while, and donkey keeps bringing more corpses, and you bury them. You don't like this one, you chuck it in the river.
You have very high exclusivity standards for your graveyard.
You've only got to have beautiful corpses.
Right, that's quite corpsist.
Yeah.
Or something. There's some kind of wrong about that. But
and for each one you bury,
you
get a bit of paper which you're going to trade in at the village after a while, and you get money for, because that's how it works.
Right.
Paid by the body.
Good.
Also, you can do things with the bits you cut off.
Right. What?
And so, you start to do that, and in the meantime, there's a village you can go to trade with people. But there's also all this construction you need to do. You chop down trees to get wood. You have to find iron. You have to get coal to smelt the iron and stuff.
What? Hang on. You're running a graveyard and smelting your own iron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you see...
traditionally, that's done off-site by a third party.
You need to make the graves. You need to make the tools, stuff to make the graves.
Okay, fair enough. So you decide to bootstrap your own primary industries to support it. Okay, yeah.
And then you
just like buy tools in town.
Yeah, and then you can buy tools in town, but they cost money. And to start with, there's no money in town because your church is closed.
Right.
And so you need to open the church so pilgrims come, and so that the innkeeper can start paying you for burying bodies.
Okay. Yeah.
And then once you open the church, because the bishop comes and he tells you that you need to open your church, and you open your church, and then you have to start being the priest as well.
Okay.
And then you have to have sermons and things. And on every Sunday, you have to, well, you don't have to, but you can have a service where you go and you do it, and depending on how good the church is and the quality score of the church and the graveyard, depends on what sermon you do, depends on if it succeeds, how much belief you get, and how much they give you money-wise in the collection box.
Okay.
Which is the important thing of the churches I've discovered.
Right.
The collection box.
I feel like this game's making a lot of different statements all at the same time.
It's making lots of statements all at the same time.
Yes,
I'm not entirely sure all of them are positive against organised religion.
Right. Yes. Sounds,
Yeah. And so you basically spend
busy.
You spend a lot of time doing things. I need to unlock this area, therefore I need to build a bridge, I need to make these planks, which need these machines to do it, and collect wood, or I need to there's somebody who needs something, somebody needs some alcohol, so I've got to find the alcohol, either make it myself or get it for other means and give it to them, so they're kind of up the next quest. And it goes on from there quite a lot. You go meet an inquisitor, there's a merchant who sells you things and you quest for. And it's very interesting and very nice, and it's very relaxing, and at the heart of it I'm harvesting corpses for bits, like I'm taking their skin off and turning it into paper so I can write sermons on it.
What? Okay, so it's a Stardew Valley for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, when everyone goes to church, they're in these grey robes with hoods over their heads. So it's not...
Cultist simulator.
It's very cultisty. I'm not pushing too hard to figure out what's wrong with the church at the moment, but I think it may not be on the light side.
Once you get enough belief, terrible things happen from the other place. Okay.
And it keeps feeling like I've got somewhere with it, but then I had a look at how many achievements I got. I got 60 out of 1,000, and then I had a look down the achievement and thought, okay, there's a lot more to this game than I know.
Didn't even occur to me to try that. Yeah. Okay, fine.
So what I've basically been doing is unlocking more technology at the moment.
It sounds like an intricate system that's interesting to play with.
Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah,
a bit like Anno, I suppose. Ratios and processes.
You've got 3 different types of XP. You've got red XP, green XP, and blue XP.
Right.
Red XP you get for doing stuff. Green XP tends to be when you harvest something or make something that's a bit like that. And blue XP is research XP, and that's really hard to get to start with.
Okay.
So I've been trying
science R&D tech tree.
Yes, there's an R&D tech tree.
Better sorts of grave.
Yes. Yes, there's 6 or 7 pages of text you can unlock.
And as an undertaker, I suppose it takes a bit of research to work out how to make steel from first principles.
Well, no, stuff like embalming fluid and all the things you would need to do to be able to make a body nice to bury.
Nice, yeah.
Nice body.
Okay.
Nice corpse, because you leave a beautiful corpse.
Fair enough.
And also, stuff like unlocking new types of furnaces so you can do glass blowing.
Sounds quite surreal, but is it fun?
Very much so.
Okay.
It's one of those nice, relaxed, I don't think it's possible to fail kind of games.
Yes, yeah.
Which I like. But just so fun and relaxing, and I really like it, and I just love the mood it has, and I love this slightly quirky, hang on, this isn't right, is it, kind of thing about everything.
Every so often you take a step back and look at what you're actually doing. Yes.
And the donkey's a talking donkey.
Why not?
And
nothing surprises me about this game anymore.
And to start off, he just moans about his boss and says, how it's not fair. He's given carrots, but he's doing all the work. And then after you're given the church, he then has issues with you because you're no longer a comrade. And in fact, you're now the oppressing people,
right?
And he's not going to bring any more bodies until you give him carrots. Because why should you do it for free? Because you're no longer a friend.
Wow, that's harsh.
It's harsh.
Yeah.
It's actually a really nice gating mechanic to stop you getting overwhelmed by bodies.
Okay.
It's really nice. I really like it. It's really enjoyable. I only started playing it because it released and it was free on Xbox Game Pass. I say free. It was part of Xbox Game Pass because they're putting more and more newly released games on it.
Amazing what a free game will do.
Yeah, and so I started playing it, and then it has made several Sunday mornings disappear.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I really like it.
Cool.
Really good. Really fun. Recommend it.
Yeah, excellent. Right, so what did you learn this week?
I learnt that the beautiful summer of doing nothing has come to an end.
And end of those halcyon days.
Halcyon days, yeah. I decided to take the summer off because I could, and I was given the opportunity to take the summer off, and now I need to
decided
get a job.
To take the autumn not off.
I've decided to take the autumn in somewhere that will pay me money.
That's always nice.
And and I've discovered that I really hate that process, but it's all over now almost. So,
excellent. Yeah. I like to say it gets easier each time, but it doesn't really. And I learned the more data about the limits of my physical endurance. I walked 21 miles last Sunday, and that was quite good.
Where did you end up?
My dad's house. Surprised him by turning up at the door. Bang, bang, bang. I walked here. You what? Brilliant. He gave me a lift home, so that was right.
Yeah.
So it's the coast path coming up at the end of September. Last week in September. Week 3. And this week I promised to do sound checks every morning because apparently I had microphone troubles and didn't even know about it till I got home.
No.
So I did a sound check the very first day and that was fine, but I think I must have just yanked it or something.
Oh, the cables break.
Caught the cable on a stile or something on early on day one, and then it got a bit intermittent from there on. And you did a good job editing, from what I gather. But yes, I'll need to do. I've brought an entirely new microphone now, and also rebuilt my phone with a new battery in it. So hopefully that all still works now. But,
it was bulging a bit.
Yes, in an alarming way. But yes, so I need to keep the hiking going. I need to keep in trim, keep my feet tough. Otherwise, I'll end up with blisters and things. But I've got new boots this time around. It's going to be an easier week. This is Padstow to St Ives, which is the guide website says it's all a lot flatter, although there will be some more up and down. So
and really useful for knowing how to disarm a bomb.
What?
There was a man from St Ives.
Yes, that was something to do with wives.
Die Hard 3.
Oh, no. What? Ah, yes. Yes, I shall be looking for a man with cats and wives and things as we go. Anyway, so good to know that I can still do it, although I couldn't do my thrice weekly run this week because my legs were aching too much for like about 3 days. So, so there are limits. That's endurance. But honestly, the coast path would be like 12 miles a day tops, so it's not really too bad.
Next time you do a 20 mile, it won't hurt as much either.
I think so, yeah. To keep it going, yeah. But I was sort of building this map in my head of places I can walk to from my house. And it's getting bigger, my radius, the areas I have conquered, because I gamify everything in my mind. Yeah. So, that's good. Right, excellent. Do your spiel.
Go to howtoaheadoftime.com to find the previous episodes of this and all the Van Hemlock episodes. Go along to YouTube. You can see the video version if you want to see our faces.
And some gameplay footage.
Which
I remember to bring along this time.
Yeah. And join us next time when we'll have more games.
See you later.
Goodbye.